You're too kind. Tell them how the communists persecuted you. Tell them how they chased you, how they hounded you. Tell them. He was probably the most famous and the best footballer ever to play in the Czech lands. They decided to stay in Czechoslovakia, which as it later turned out, was probably the biggest mistake of their lives.
So this wasn't only a story of football goals, but also of defiance against the Nazi regime, and later, the communist regime.
So I looked at him in awe, and I finally got to talk to him for the first time. He'd line up empty bottles on the crossbar and try to hit them from the edge of the penalty area. Most of the time, he hit almost all of them.
Get his back up! Get his back up! It's a goal!
You're listening to a premium episode of Footy Past Stories, a podcast where football history comes to life. Today, we're revisiting the half-forgotten story of Czech striker Josef Bican, one of the greatest goal scorers in football history. Host Peter Sadivi spoke about his life with Czech football historian Jaroslav Kolář. Both voices are rendered by artificial intelligence.
Hello, Jaroslav.
Hello.
Although he's among the best forwards in football history, some listeners may never have heard of Josef Bican. How would you introduce him to someone like that?
Well, it's hard to explain the fate of a man born 112 years ago. In my view, he was probably the most famous and the best footballer ever to play in the Czech lands. Sadly, very few people know that, especially abroad.
Let's make one thing clear right from the start. Sources vary. How many official goals did Josef Bican actually score?
That's a great question, but also a tricky one. What counts as an official goal? Statisticians have been debating it more and more, especially as Cristiano Ronaldo keeps breaking records, past and present. They argue and can't agree because each uses slightly different criteria, what to include as official matches and what to leave out, and so on. I'd rely on the numbers compiled by Roman Jacek, the statistician of the Czech Football Association, whose work I trust. He did a brilliant job documenting the entire league from 1925 to the present, effectively summarizing Bican's scoring career in our league as well. I believe his figures, 805 goals in 536 official matches, are probably the closest to the truth.
Some sources even claim that if you include unofficial games, friendlies, and exhibition matches, he scored well over 1,000 goals. I've even seen more than 1,800, which would make him a better goalscorer than Cristiano Ronaldo or Romario. So how do we get to the truth? Do we really have to rely on those historical records you mentioned?
Yes, there's really no other way. And remember what things looked like 100 years ago. Newspapers would report how the match ended and who scored, and a handful of reporters in the stands had to figure out which player actually put the ball in the net. That alone means we're counting imprecise numbers as precisely as we can. That's one thing. The other is this. If we include friendlies that were reported in the press with full match reports, the number of matches Bican played could easily double, if not more. And I'm sure he scored even more in those friendlies than in the so-called official competitive games. If we simply double it, we're already at around 1,600 goals. So yes, it may well be so, but in practice, it doesn't matter. Let's say that whether it was 1,600 or 1,800 is basically irrelevant. It was a huge number, and in that sense, he was unique.
Can we even compare goals scored today with those scored a century ago? Meaning Ronaldo's goals versus Bican's?
That's a good question. Let me explain. It was a completely different era, a different game, a different style. Teams often lined up with 5 forwards against 2 defenders and 3 halfbacks, so attackers had an inherent edge. And Bican had an even bigger advantage. For his time, he was incredibly fast. If he got the ball in behind and sprinted, defenders simply couldn't catch him. In that sense, yes, it was easier for him. But Bican had a saying he used to explain himself when asked about this. A chance is always just one, and it's always the same. If the ball is on my head or on my foot in the box, either I hit it and score, or I miss and don't. That's also true today. Plenty of strikers get chances, but against sophisticated defenses they don't convert. Bican usually did.